heart of the Mediterranean, on a cold early spring morning, a medium-sized inflatable boat is cutting through the waves. Destination, the small Lampedusa island south of Italy. On board, there's a captain, 18-year-old Usman, among 15 other migrants, gasoline jugs, and a spare motor. After an 18-hour journey, the boat is finally a few hours away from shore. Everything is calm and smooth, until bright projectors flash the ship, followed by siren sounds, and an Italian Coast Guard boat appears out of nowhere. Panic takes over the passengers. Some choose to stay on the boat, waiting to be arrested, while others desperately jump into the water in an attempt to swim their way to shore. Only a few hours later, a group of migrants is locked in an Italian jail, another group is announced dead, and the rest are missing. Over the last 30 years, this exact scenario has happened hundreds of times. Thousands of lives have been lost so far, young men, women, and even babies. How are Mediterranean countries still unable to solve this problem? How are these smuggling operations perfected? And who's moving the strings behind the scenes? This is the sad reality of the deadliest migration route in the world. Usman grew up in Bamako, the capital of Mali. When he was 14 years old, his older brother traveled to France to overstay his visa and look for job opportunities. After not hearing from him for months, they finally reconnected on Facebook. Usman's brother would tell him stories about how he got a high-paying job at a supermarket, how the weather is way different in France, and how attractive and different the girls are. Usman's fascination with his brother's stories grew. With the majority of guys in his circle either unemployed or working shitty, low-paying jobs, Usman knew that the only path to a better future is following his older brother's footsteps and moving to Europe. As soon as he graduated high school, he applied to many universities in France. Some refused the application straight away, while others demanded a deposit of several thousand euros, an amount of money Usman didn't have. These rejections didn't stop him from trying other methods. His next attempt was filing for a tourist visa to overstay it. After several weeks of paperwork and hundreds of euros in fees, Usman's visa gets denied. Consumed by anger, Usman decides to head to North Africa without telling anyone. In the early 90s, with the formation of the European Union in '93, many European countries started implementing stricter visa regimes. This rigidness started with Western European countries like Italy, France, and Spain reaching Central Europe. North Africans initially bore the brunt of the tightened controls, since historically they had migrated in large numbers. Visa denial started increasing. North Africans decided to take matters into their own hands. At first, they chose the easiest route, entering Europe from Morocco across the tiny Strait of Gibraltar, less than 13 kilometers across at its narrowest, or through the Spanish enclave cities of Ceuta and Melilla. With increased Spanish vigilance, the number of routes diversified. Over the years, North Africans changed routes according to security measures taken at the time, and so did the West Africans who followed them. Usman's journey to North Africa was a real-life action movie. First, he had to find what the smuggling industry calls connection men, who are usually individuals located in West African countries. Connection men are responsible for connecting groups of migrants with transporters who will drive them across the Sahara Desert to one of the North African countries, Morocco, Libya, or Tunisia, and then connect them with what the migrants call Arabo men, boat owners who are responsible for the final phase of the operation, which is crossing the Mediterranean. The handling of finance has evolved into an established ritual. Once the migrant and the connection man agree on a fee, a banker, known to both, is designated to collect and hold the money. The migrant pays normally a half or a third of the fee to the connection man and gives the remaining amount to the banker to be paid only when the migrant arrives safely in Europe. With this upfront money, the connection man arranges the transport, including the necessary bribes for the authorities. With a small backpack, a water bottle, and a few hundred euros in his pocket, Usman's long, bumpy ride begins. A Toyota pickup truck, the driver, the banker, and the connection man in the front, and a fully packed cargo bed in the back. The risk of taking this ride is beyond belief. If a migrant gets dehydrated, they're pretty much done. If they fall off the truck, they're left behind, and if they get caught, they're on their own. Usman holds on tight and hopes for the best.
You have to be lucky so the car don't break up in the middle of the trip, because if the car break up in the middle of the trip, most of the time it's over. You guys might just die.
Days later, after crossing thousands of kilometers and bribing multiple checkpoint officers along the way, the group makes their way to the south of Tunisia. As soon as they're dropped off, they're taken by another transporter who takes them to one of the coastal cities from where the departure will take place. There, they're provided accommodation and told to lay low until further notice. In the mid-2000s, irregular migration to Europe reached new heights. Even with European countries becoming more strict about dealing with their borders, migrants continued to find new routes and ways to enter European soil. The most effective routes migrants take are from Morocco to Spain and the Canary Islands, from Tunisia to Lampedusa, Italy, or Malta, or from Egypt crossing the Mediterranean to Greece. By 2009, almost 100,000 irregular migrants were detected and a lot more weren't. Starting in 2011, migration numbers reached an all-time high. With the revolutions in Tunisia and Libya, the country's navies were almost non-existent at the time. By 2014, 170,000 irregular migrants crossed the sea into Italy alone. The EU didn't like that. Numerous government officials from both the EU and North African countries started meeting regularly to discuss a way to end the phenomenon. But what the following years would show is that taking down the smuggling industry is far more complicated than they expected. Contrary to common belief, smuggling migrants to Europe is far from an arbitrary operation. For the most part, it's dominated by an international crime organization. The operation is set up in a pyramidal hierarchy. At the bottom are people whose participation is temporary, usually several active migrants who execute orders in exchange for free passage. Above them are many touts who are responsible for the day-to-day operations: transportation, collecting money, operating safe houses, and bribing local authorities. At the top are the business owners, those who make the high-level arrangements necessary for the smuggling to continue. In some areas, these people are well known and untouchable. Many of the business owners are traders who import goods from Morocco and Algeria and return the trucks full of migrants. In interviews, former migrants asserted that the vehicles and vessels on which they were transported were owned by officers of the Moroccan Navy. Upon arrival, Ousmane is placed in a safe house in a coastal city north of Tunisia, among many other migrants. He pays 20 euros a day for accommodation and food. He's not allowed to have a SIM card and asked to keep a low profile and avoid trouble. Since it takes time to gather enough migrants to fill a boat, Ousmane's stay at the safe house gets extended. Days become weeks, and weeks become months. With money running low, he decides to get a job as a construction worker. While Ousmane chose to make honest money, many of his safe house cohabitants chose differently. In the last decade, tensions between North Africans and sub-Saharan migrants have grown tremendously. With the exponential growth in the numbers of West Africans in the region, many cases of racism have been reported over the years. On the other hand, local North Africans complain about the increase of crime, especially robberies, in their local communities. Ousmane's departure night comes. He pays for the trip to the embarkation point, a remote beach controlled by the boat owner. The migrants silently wait on the beach until the boat captain sends a laser signal. One by one, the migrants get on the boat, which is usually overloaded, and the journey begins. Depending on the boat's weight and weather conditions, the journey could take up to 24 hours. When a boat of migrants crosses the Mediterranean, it usually ends in one of three ways: drowning, getting caught by authorities, or for the few lucky, making it to European soil. According to the UN, more than 1,800 people have been reported dead or missing along the central Mediterranean route in 2023 alone, including women and children. In the last few years, rumors arose that Italian forces purposefully ignored sinking ships full of migrants on the coast of Sicily. Although phone recordings and videos documented such events, Italian authorities denied any related allegations. The migrants who get caught by authorities are usually placed in jails disguised as refugee centers. Over the years, severe criticism has been applied towards Spanish and Italian authorities, as many of these centers allegedly mistreat migrants and violated their human rights. Most of the time, migrants are treated the same as smugglers, scolded, denied medication, and sometimes beaten. In Italy, almost 1,400 people are currently being held in prison on smuggling charges. For the lucky migrants who make it to the other side, things are not as glamorous as described by USMAN'S brother. Without residency papers, migrants are forced to work in the black market. Some get scammed off their promised paychecks, while others become thieves and scammers themselves. Although continuous efforts are put towards educating and housing migrants, most European countries facing the migration problem are still unable to cover the increasing overflow of migrants reaching European land. As a result, European decision-makers have become divided. One group demands increased budgets, while another group pushes for mass deportation. As for Usman, things turned out way differently than his brother's stories. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.